I had a couple of people tell me, oh, you'd never be able to survive full time on your own, and it would take years and years to build that up. And then the reality is, it was just a couple of years, and COVID changed everything. I can say that it's tougher the longer you've been doing things the wrong way, to the point where, let's say, if somebody had decades and they wanted to suddenly change, like people who say that everyone comes into the office, everyone wants to physically sign their return, and that's how you've been doing it. A lot tougher than starting out and you have 20 to 50 clients that are possibly even from a different generation.
Welcome back to this episode of Diary of a Tax Practice Owner. I have Catherine Roe. Catherine Roe is one of our Workflows for Tax Pros clients, but she also has taken a very exciting turn, and she had us nodding yes from the moment that we saw the title of her book, No More 24/7 Entrepreneurs, Take Your Life Back. Honestly, we felt like we could have written that ourselves. Put in Tax Pro in there. But like us, she has built a business around the radical idea that you can run a successful practice without running yourself into the ground. She's the founder of Cowart Roe CPA, a virtual firm, and Cowart Roe Academy, where she teaches business efficiency and financial literacy to entrepreneurs who want more clarity, more confidence, and more time. She's spoken on time and energy management at the LCPA Women's Leadership Conference, and she's about to launch the No More 24/7 course, which is a guided experience that brings her best-selling book to life with weekly sessions, action steps, and real support. We love that she's not just talking about boundaries and sustainability. She's actually building tools to help entrepreneurs live them out. So, Catherine, I am so glad to have you here today and to talk about this very important conversation with our audience that listen to this podcast, because let me tell you, these people, they're living that life. They want no more 24/7 too. So I'm excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is so great because I think we created this podcast to share the journey that someone that steps into that entrepreneurial role can take, right? Like
Right.
it is not one that we all set out to have. I know myself, I did not. I went like the should route: job, house, MBA, higher title job, higher paid job, all of those things. I never expected to actually go out on my own and be an entrepreneur. And so when you don't have solid role models in that, it's so hard to know how to do that. But I would love to start today's conversation with how you ended up in this position. Like, where did you start? How did you fall into accounting? And what was the journey that led you to writing a book about how to not work 24/7 and help others?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, in my entire professional career, I've always been an accountant. But in school, it's tough when you're 17 and you're thrust into college, and suddenly you are making a decision that you're being told is going to affect the rest of your life. Well, you get
Mhm,
your degree in, that is the end all be all.
mhm,
Now, I'm not going to say that accounting is bad or anything, but we're living in a society now where that's changed. Anything can springboard into something else,
mhm,
or you can keep adding on. So while I'm still an accountant, there are other things that I'm doing.
mhm.
But just like what you said, I started out in the corporate world where you're just climbing the ladder or just kind of stuck in it, trying to figure out, where do I fit in?
Mhm,
What's my
mhm.
place in all of this? And working in that big accounting firm environment, I never really felt like I found my personal place where I felt like I was making an impactful difference for anyone, myself or any of the clients that I was working on, which honestly just kind of seemed like list in a spreadsheet on the computer, because I never really had much interaction with them. And when I did, it was just, oh, I'm the staff. This is what we need. And that was kind of the end of the conversation there.
Yeah.
So I actually reached a place where I started to question whether accounting was even for me.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I had
How did
already
you
gotten my license then too. So
Oh, wow.
that
How did you end up in the accounting in the first place? Was it I mean, like for me, my dad was a CFO of a hospital. He never got a CPA, but he worked as an accountant and in the staff accounting role for many different organizations. And so it was kind of always a thing that I was exposed to because of him. And when I went to college, it was like the easiest thing for me to do. And I was like, oh, well, this is easy. And
Yeah.
it must mean that I'm good at it. So I went with it and got my degree. But what was your journey?
I didn't even really know what accounting was when I went
Oh,
into school. Never really
interesting.
knew much about it at all. I thought that I was going to be a lawyer. I realized at some point that the market was oversaturated and that it probably wouldn't be the best entry point. And my mom actually told me, she said, well, the reality is you can get any degree for your
Mhm.
undergrad and then go into law school. Nothing
Hmm.
to fret over yet. So she suggested business. She's like, this is pretty stable. Business seems like a good idea. And so I went with it. I ended up having 3 major changes. I know a lot of people fret over that. It's not really that big of a deal. It's life. And if you find something works better, then you go for it. So I started out poli sci, and I was actually going to get a minor. I can tell that story in a second.
Okay.
When I switched to business, and I was like, I'm going to do something more specific because at
Mhm.
least I'm gonna have something real specific. And I ended up double majoring in business administration and accounting. Accounting is what I picked because I would kind of narrowed it down between finance and accounting, and I didn't like math. That's like the biggest joke. So other accountants would get that. Other people kind of just stare at me like I'm the worst accountant in the world for making jokes like that. Because
Accounting for me is a puzzle, right? Like it's a
organization. Yeah,
yeah,
where do things go? Yeah.
yeah,
So
absolutely. And that's what I loved
I
about
like
it.
that aspect, the organizing where things fit. The balance sheet, it's in balance. It's
Mhm.
when it's right or not.
Sensible.
So that kind of stuff. So I liked that, and that's how I ended up in accounting and just kind of continued and stuck with it. I did not end up getting the poli sci minor. I was 1 or 2 classes shy. I was on a good progression for that, and one of the professors gave me some kind of lecture about why are you here when I asked her if I could have a different date for a test because it was the date of a major interview for an position at a large accounting firm. And
Oh.
I'll never forget that. That's like the only really bad experience I kind of had in college at that level. And I was like, I'm done with this. I would have had to take more of her classes. And I
Mm,
realized because going to school just to go to school is not going to help anyone.
right.
So many people go to school without a plan just because they think it's the thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not always the thing to do.
Yeah.
So if you're going to school for a reason, that is your reason.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, that's it's unfortunate that he was so rigid in that because you think that they would support and celebrate, especially something like a big interview based on all the
right.
hard work that you had done to get to that point, and that they would have a little bit of flexibility. But that's too bad that it left it
Oh
bad taste.
well.
Yeah, it's a lesson, right? But it's taught you how to choose different in your path. So I love that. Okay, so you graduated and you went to, did you go into like the public route and
I never did Big 4. I'm actually glad because, for one thing, you get honed in to
Mhm,
very specific niches very early on, and if that's not what's right for you,
mhm,
then, it's not gonna work. I work primarily with small businesses. I never would have got that because they work with major
yeah,
corporations, and so it's kind of a blessing. Everyone said that's the way to go. Everyone said you have to do that, and at a minimum, you have to go to a public accounting firm, which isn't
mhm,
always true for everybody.
mm-mm, mm-mm.
And it was kind of like all these pressures. You have to do this, you have to do that. This is the approach to take. And I have a friend who she was bragging on social media at one point about working 90 hours. She had an 89-hour, like, for her 2 weeks, or no, it was for 1 week, I think. Yeah, it was 1 week,
Ugh,
89 hours.
that's exactly why I didn't go the public route. I was like,
And I'm like,
that is
why are
not
you
a life that
bragging
I
on
want.
this?
It was just like when I heard that, and it's not that I'm afraid of work, right? But I was afraid of that kind of work, that expectation of
Right.
grinding and hustling and basically being anything and everything to your clients. Like that was
Yeah.
not my, and naturally that was not my calling. So I'm similar to you. I did not go that route.
And
So.
there's sticking it out, and then there's being convinced it's a bragging right.
Right, 100%, 100%. So you went into did you go into a smaller public firm, or what was your next step?
So I worked at large local firms, both in New Orleans and in Houston. I wanted to see that real big corporate
Mhm,
vibe. And
mhm.
and I thought that's what it was. It just seemed cold though.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it actually was better, the smaller local firms, than the real big, because where I
Mhm.
worked, it was pretty similar to
Yeah.
that big four environment. And don't get me wrong, if that works for people, it works.
Yeah,
There's
100%.
something for
Everyone has their
everyone,
own journey.
but anyone that's gonna go the route of, "Should I start my own firm? Should I start my own practice?" It could be that's not your place, and that there's
Yeah,
something new for you.
yeah. Was there a moment that you were like, "Okay, it's time for me to go out on my own?" Like, what was that moment?
I never thought that I would own one business, let alone do multiple different things. I was one of those where it just kind of fell into my lap. I knew that public accounting as I knew it was not gonna be for me anymore. And I started looking for jobs in industry. I worked at
Mhm,
a couple of really great places, really enjoyed that, but it was still, you're sitting in an office building
mhm.
and that's your life. It's 9 to 5, you're just there every day, and that's kind of the end all be all. Nothing's going to change except your title and your pay. You're still going to
Slowly.
be in the same place. And I don't mean that to be bad, because sometimes people like that. Some
Yeah,
people
the
are good with
stability.
that and they fit that mold. But I started taking on little things on the side. First, it was just because people needed help. And
Mhm,
then I ended up starting to see, hey, what could this be?
mhm,
And grow
mhm.
that. I had a couple of people tell me, oh, you'd never be able to survive full time on your own. And it would take years and years
What?
to
No way.
build that up. And then the reality is, it was just a couple years, and COVID changed everything.
Yeah.
There's suddenly virtual is more accepted than
Mhm,
not, even at
mhm,
this point.
mhm.
And now you can run a firm online.
Yeah,
There's all
100%.
the
You can live
tools, everything.
wherever you want.
Yeah.
You can work from the beach. Like, it's you can have that lifestyle that you
Yeah.
want. You're no longer scripted to the box of the old school, right? Like, and it
Right.
was a very firm box. It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And
So
we have an office now,
oh,
but we're a
congratulations.
virtual firm.
Yeah,
So that's for us. That's our
yeah.
space, and it helps to work in person and be together, and we like that feel,
Mhm.
but it's a virtual firm. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of like our zone, and I think that kind of middle ground has kind of helped keep us from being just locked away on the computer. Because suddenly, if you're just locked away sitting at the computer, whether you're at the beach, in a cubicle, anywhere, that is your new prison.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, 100%. So you went out on your own and you built your firm. It's been very successful, but it sounds to me like maybe you learned at some point that what you were building was not necessarily what you wanted. Was
Yeah.
there a story behind that?
So it wasn't so much like there's some kind of big epiphany moment, aside from maybe slowly realizing over time that when you fall into something and you don't have a plan, right? So it's
Yeah.
not like you plan for it, because there are people that will say, I'm going to start a business. They set up a plan, you have a business plan, all that stuff, all the things that you do when you start your second one, because you didn't do it the first time. And it just kind of, when everything grows, it can grow too fast, it can go crazy. That's one thing that we see with our clients in accounting. When they start to grow real big, things fall to the wayside. Usually
Mhm.
it's accounting, and then they're trying to find a CPA, begging you for help. Please get me on track. We didn't have the resources before. Come help us now, type of
Yeah.
deal. It was a lot of that, not having intentionality with things,
Right.
not setting certain processes and limitations in place early on, that it can be really tough to come back from. You
Yeah.
have to do it. You have to set your boundaries and
Yeah.
figure all that out. It's tough. It's
Yeah.
even tougher when you don't do it from the beginning, but it can be done.
Well, and I think when people start in the beginning, there's this urgency to just make it succeed, right?
Right.
And you even saw that probably as you were building your side hustle, right? Like you're like, "Oh, maybe this will be something." And you're like, "Oh, this is sparking into maybe an actual little
Right.
tiny fire."
Right.
And then you're like, "Okay, I need to feed the fire to make it a bonfire." And so you do anything and everything that's necessary to get that thing off the ground because you're
Yeah.
now once you commit, it's like now I have to make my paycheck. I have to like make the money come in the door. And so you kind of do sacrifice those boundaries. And also, you just don't have the experience for it because
Right.
when you're coming out of a firm, that firm owner went through that same cycle and had to learn what are boundaries, who do I want to work with, and that just comes with time. So I think it's a natural progression. But
Yeah.
there's a point where someone wakes up and they're like, "Crap, I'm building something," and sometimes it's 2 years in, sometimes it's 20 years in, and they're
Right.
like, "I built something that is not fueling me. It's degrading my life." And that is what you sounds like started learning yourself. What kind of things, like how did you start? Because you said you built this framework for yourself and now you're teaching others the framework you started. But how did you start building and dissecting what this no more 24/7 framework can look like?
Well, when I decided that I wanted to write a book, I had some ideas, and this was what kind of fell together. And it kind of
Mm.
fell in a chronological order. And I realized I didn't even know just how crazy things were before
For you or for
for
others?
me.
Ah.
Especially, and it was kind of a realization throughout. It's not just an instruction manual, it has my true experiences, the things I
Mm.
did right and wrong, as well as other professionals that I
Mhm.
spoke with and interacted with, and I was able to get their stories. And I'm glad to be able to share those with other people too, because we're all in this together. We all have made mistakes, we've all done great things, and we'll
Yeah.
continue to do both, all of
Yeah.
us. And
Yeah.
that's the struggle, is understanding, learning to accept that, and then moving forward, moving through
Mhm.
that.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think that's so critical, and I think it's also, like, when you're in those, like, super stressed, almost on the verge of burnout, right? Like, you're building something and you just go heads down. You kinda blinders
Yeah.
on, you stop imagining, you stop dreaming, you stop thinking this can get better, and you just are literally, like, one fire after the next, and you just
Yeah.
keep doing, right? And so, when you don't ever let yourself just be, because 'cause you're always doing, you can't actually evaluate where have I been and where do I actually want to go? And that's when you
Right.
can just make those micro pivots into that next phase, that next chapter. And I'm guessing when you had reevaluated, was it a long journey for you to like make the improvements to get things back to where you want them to be rather than just the doing?
I can say that it's tougher the longer you've been doing things the wrong way to make a
Mm,
change, to the
mhm.
point where, let's say if somebody had decades and they wanted to suddenly change. Like people who say that everyone comes into the office, everyone wants to physically sign their return, and that's how you've been doing it, and that's everyone, then
Yeah.
that's a lot tougher than starting out and you have 20 to 50 clients that are possibly even from a different generation, where you
Right.
can get them into that mindset of the electronics better. And then you're
Mhm.
only having to sell to a few people the
Mhm.
idea, oh, this is more convenient for you. Because that's
Mhm. Yeah.
really what you want to sell. You want to sell that it's more convenient for the client, because it really should be. And that's
Yeah.
really the whole point of it, especially being in a service based business. So I would say it's tough because there's little things. Like
Mhm.
each thing is a different struggle. Making sure that you're not just looking at your email all day long. That's one thing.
Right.
That's still a
Yeah.
struggle. That's still a
Yeah.
struggle for me. I could sit there and watch the next problem come in, the next one, and oh,
And
that's a
reacting
thank
always.
you. I'm glad for that one. All day long. It's easy to get caught up in that. So a lot of it's setting plans in place, but then realizing that it's not going to always you're not going to always make the right decision, and then
Yeah.
how do you react and come back from that? That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So, number one, it's making those micro shifts. What would you say are maybe one or two other things that people can do to start pulling their heads out of I won't say out of the sand, but that's kind of the analogy that's coming to my mind, because a lot of people just don't even realize that they've stuck their heads in the sand. So what are some other things that people could do to start realizing that they can start making the pivot away from 24/7?
I think a lot of people just think they don't have time. The
Mm,
problem when you think you don't have time to make change is that you're never going to end up with the time. If you
no.
needed to hire someone, you needed to hire them a long time ago, and you don't have time to train them now, you got to make it. You got to make the
Right.
time and get that to happen. There's going to be some sacrifice to starting out to get things back on track, and it's temporary though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
When you're just sitting in the grind with no end in sight, that's a totally different feeling of hopelessness and lost than
Hmm.
if you are on track, you have a plan and a goal. And once you meet X level, then you can level up.
Hmm.
And it's a different approach to a different mindset. Yes, you might have to put more effort into something right now, but it's going to make things easier later.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Keeping that end goal in sight.
Yeah. How has technology allowed you to achieve working less?
Technology is good and bad, and
Okay.
realizing which and when is it's an art, and that's really what everything boils down to.
Hmm.
You can misuse anything.
Sure.
So, let's say early on, and this is actually a story that I have in the book. Early on when I started, I had less than 20 clients, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't even really trying. And I kept track of everything in Google Drive. Okay. In
Sure.
Google Drive, there was a folder for every single client. And you know what? If let's say you just have 5 clients, 20 is probably too much for that even. But if you have
Yeah.
5 clients, it's not that hard. You
Yeah.
do a manual engagement letter, you write their address and their name and make it all pretty, send it out in DocuSign. You do that 5 times, that's really not that much.
No.
But if you have 150 clients and you're doing that, the the number I came up with from one year to the next was 2 working weeks I wasted
Ooh,
on engagement letters in one year. Yeah.
ooh.
Isn't that lovely? That and then this is the real kicker, okay? Have not even started the
The
engagement, have
work.
not started anything that is income generating at that point.
Yeah.
Wasted 2 weeks, not income generating. Doesn't really seem good.
No,
And then
no.
that's when I realized I need different options.
Mhm,
And then I found TaxDome and I was like, this can do everything,
mhm,
all the things. All I need
mhm.
is email, tax software, and TaxDome, honestly, for the most part. I mean, we have
Yeah,
some specialty softwares that do fun stuff, but that's a big selling point in my book. You got to have your email domain package, your
yeah,
CRM, and then any kind of specialized industry software like tax software if you're
yeah,
in accounting.
yeah,
I mean,
100%.
that's really what you need. And then when you can build that out, then you have it working for you.
Right. Well, you start carving back that time. Slow, like, it doesn't happen
Yeah,
overnight, as we know, because you need the systems, the strategy, the structure to make the tool do what you want it to
right.
do. But once you start putting that in place for each of the major service lines that you have, and the having things more organized, like, you start getting back an hour here, an hour there, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, right? And it's
Yeah,
like all of a sudden it's multiplying and you're like, "Wow, I can double my capacity because
right,
now I have everything streamlined and I'm a systems first approach, because then I can scale and build as I choose, right? Like, you can start pulling the
right,
levers that feed in more clients, or you bring on a team member who can take on more capacity, like, and you just turn on the lever for leads and off it goes, right? Like, that is so powerful in any business, and especially in tax practices and accounting practices, because there is such demand right now with all of the older generations cutting back their books and,
oh yeah,
and retiring and just dropping out of the face of the earth. And the younger generations are having to pick that slack up. And so you have to have those systems in place to work
absolutely,
streamlined. Hmm.
absolutely.
Cool. So what would you like, how would you wrap this up? What would you give someone as a next step or a first step if they're feeling where you were, like the person that needs to read your book? What would you say to them today to help them?
Definitely get the book. We have a program that we are launching on June 2nd, and we're
Cool.
having different cohorts. So there will be another one. We have a self-study version too, but that's kind of the live kind of community feel where we
Mm.
have a weekly Zoom for 6 weeks. And what I really enjoy about the live one is that everyone is together. And what I've seen in the past is we all get these realizations, me included,
Yeah.
that everyone's in it together. We're all in it
Yeah.
together in different industries, in the same one, that we all
Mhm.
deal with the same struggles. And it closes off that place where you feel alone.
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
good enough. I'm embarrassed that I'm doing this wrong.
Mm.
But then suddenly you're not the only one.
Yeah.
And everybody has the same struggles. And we are just trying to find our way, trying to find
Yeah.
our path.
So often the people that step into owning tax and accounting firms and even the small businesses, they have a technical skill and they say, I can go and start something. And so they build that technical skill, but they just basically are building themselves a really heavy job
Right.
initially, right? And so when you come out of that and you start stepping into the entrepreneurial thought mindset, it is so helpful to have others around you. And
Yeah.
I highly encourage people to think that way because I know myself, like being exposed to other people and hearing their struggles and hearing their successes even inspires me to keep trying and morphing and experimenting in my own business,
Yeah.
whether they're someone that does the exact same thing as me or someone that owns a landscaping business. Like we
Right.
can all learn from each other. And just knowing that you are not alone, to your point, is so valuable. Well, I think it's such a needed thing in the industry. And I'm so excited that you've launched this book, that you're launching your
Yeah.
program. So where can people go and learn more about you? Maybe pick up your book and start reading so they can start joining
Yes.
the Catherine Roe environment.
So the book is on Amazon. No more 24/7. I've got right here. Got the
Beautiful.
book, and
Congratulations.
it can be also found on the website cowartroacademy.com. And also in there is the program information. We've got some freebies. You can sign up for a newsletter to get updates. We have some new things that we're going to be pumping out, some of them more financial literacy based, and some more things that are related to the No More 24/7 too. So
Cool.
always a little bit of new things coming up, surprises.
Well, and if you feel like your business is humming in your practice and you have clients that are small business owners, and you may want to turn them on to Catherine's world because she can help them kind of get their stuff in order without you having to be their business coach as their financial professional as well.
Absolutely.
So that is another way to look at this. So, well, Catherine, this has been so fascinating. I'm so excited for you. And do go check out Catherine's website. We'll have it below the video or the podcast here in the show notes. So do make sure you go and get her book, support her, and learn from her because she has obviously built something that has allowed her to not only run a very successful practice, but now built a second business and helping others, sharing her knowledge. So congratulations. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And for everyone listening, we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Diary of a Tax Practice Owner, where we'll be sharing more stories just like Catherine's, hoping to inspire you to build a business and a life that you love. So thanks for being here. We'll see you all again next time.